Indeed. Though imagine it's late March. You're in the Colorado Rockies. And the state government has just taken $12 million meant for winter snowplows and basically dumped it instantly into fighting roadside wildfires.
Yeah, it's a massive pivot.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today. We've got articles, government notices, international wires, all curated around the top headlines for today, March 30th, 2026.
Right, and the through line connecting everything you're about to hear today is, well, it's the collapse of the calendar.
Exactly. We are looking at what happens when massive systems, from our climate to our national infrastructure, are just forced to pivot with absolutely zero warning.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So the physical environment is always the ultimate leading indicator, And the data coming out of the Eagle Valley today is just historic.
It's wild.
The transition we are seeing, it isn't a gentle spring thaw. It's like pulling the emergency brake on a freight train. The ecological momentum can't just stop. It has to go somewhere.
Right. So yesterday, March 29th, Beaver Creek officially terminated its ski season.
A 41-year low snowpack and record heat, just forcing a premier luxury resort to just shut the lifts down weeks ahead of schedule.
Yeah, and Steamboat Resort is following suit. They're moving their final day up to April 5th.
And looking at the operational memos in our sources, this isn't just about, skiers losing a few days of spring turns. It's a complete logistical nightmare.
Oh, absolutely.
You have thousands of seasonal workers whose housing, their income, it's all tied to a season that just evaporated overnight.
What's fascinating here is how quickly that ecological emergency brake triggers municipal alarm bells. Like Denver Water and several regional mountain municipalities have already initiated Stage 1 water restrictions.
And Stage 1 isn't just a friendly flyer on your door asking you to take shorter showers, right?
No, it's a legal trigger.
Yeah.
It dictates municipal watering schedules, it limits public fountain operations, and it really serves as a strict warning to the hospitality industry that their primary resource is suddenly scarce. We are also seeing physical displacement. The water levels at Dillon Reservoir are so historically low that the marina there had to physically relocate its courtesy dock today.
Just to keep boats from grounding out in the mud.
Exacts.
That brings up a concept I've been kind of turning over while reading these sources. It feels like these communities are experiencing a functional reverse snow day.
Oh, I like that. A reverse snow day.
Yeah, because normally a massive blizzard hits, the roads close, and the local economy temporarily freezes. But here, the record heat has essentially canceled the region's main economic engine, the snow itself.
Right.
So instead of staying home and drinking hot cocoa, municipal leaders are scrambling to secure the drinking water supply.
And the financial translation of that reverse snow day panic is striking. Which brings us back to that $12 million figure you mentioned at the top.
Yeah, the CDOT money.
Right. The Colorado Department of Transportation, CDOT, has authorized the immediate diversion of $12 million in unused snow plowing funds directly into roadside wildfire mitigation.
I want to break down the mechanics of that, actually, because shifting maintenance funds in the spring, that's a standard procedure, isn't it? The state always transitions from winter to summer roads.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is the velocity and the specific destination of those funds that make this completely unprecedented. You don't dump $12 million in a single stroke into fire mitigation in March unless the metrics are screaming at you.
Like what kind of metrics?
Well, the local fire districts monitor something called the Energy Release Component, or the ERC.
Which measures what, exactly?
It's a scientific metric of how hot the fuel's on the ground.
Okay.
So the dead timber, the dried brush, how hot they will burn if ignited. And because of the extreme drought and the missing snowpack, the ERC is already at midsummer danger levels.
In March.
Yeah. They aren't transitioning into spring. They're leaping straight into a catastrophic fire season.
That physical momentum you're talking about, the train hitting the brakes, it's exposing the economic tracks underneath. If the physical season is shrinking, the financial pressure has to go somewhere. Which brings us to the underlying economic pressures facing these mountain towns, and specifically this lawsuit crossing the wires today, the Galosia v. Vail Resorts, Inc. lawsuit.
Yeah, it's the ultimate tension between community preservation and corporate reality. This is a massive federal class action antitrust lawsuit. The plaintiffs are alleging that Vail Resorts and Alterra operate an illegal duopoly that essentially manipulates the entire ski industry.
So what does this all mean for the consumer? Because the headline number everyone is staring at today is $356.
Right.
That is the cost of a single-day lift ticket at Vail. But let's look at the mechanics of this lawsuit. How exactly does a duopoly manipulate lift ticket pricing across an entire region to hit that astronomical number?
Well, it comes down to market consolidation and behavioral economics. Over the last decade, Vail and Alterra have bought up dozens of resorts, creating these mega passes, the Epic and Icon passes.
Right, everyone has one of those now.
Exactly. And the lawsuit alleges that they artificially inflate the price of a single-day ticket to an incredibly punitive level, like that $356.
Just a crazy number.
Yeah, but not because they expect a lot of people to buy it. They do it to essentially force consumers into buying the multi-resort season passes months in advance.
So it's a mechanism to secure the bag early.
Precisely.
I mean, if I buy my pass in September, the resort has my money regardless of whether it actually snows in March. They've shifted the climate risk entirely onto the consumer.
That's it exactly. It locks in revenue before the snow even falls, which is a brilliant corporate hedge against the exact climate unpredictability we just talked about. But, the lawsuit argues this practice destroys competition and completely prices out the average family.
And when the core economic driver becomes that expensive, the town inevitably reshapes itself, right? It caters exclusively to the demographic that can afford a $300 lift ticket.
Exactly.
You look at the public notices from the town of Vail in our source stack, and residents are just packing town council meetings to protest massive new luxury developments like the Solaris project.
Yeah, they're arguing the town is losing its cultural staples.
Right.
Like the Red Lion is losing out to high-end designer retail.
And the local institutions that hold the community together are feeling that intense squeeze too. I mean, legacy media is having to pivot just as hard as the ski resorts.
Oh, for sure. The publishers of the Vail Daily and the Summit Daily announced they are transitioning to digital access fees starting in April.
Which is a profound cultural shift. For decades, those free daily printed papers have been the absolute lifeblood of local information in those valleys. You walk into literally any coffee shop and it's right there on the counter. Why make this aggressive pivot right now?
Well, because the underlying economic bedrock has fundamentally changed. The traditional print advertising model has collapsed, while simultaneously the cost of simply keeping a business open and paying employees in these high-cost valleys has just skyrocketed.
So they have no choice.
Right. The media has to put up a paywall just to survive the ecosystem it's reporting on.
Wow. And even the literal physical infrastructure is being torn up and reshaped today to handle this evolution. The town of Eagle is beginning major roadway and underground utility improvements on Capitol Street today, March 30th.
Yeah, and meanwhile, CDOT is starting intermittent overnight closures for a massive bridge realignment on the I-70 Floyd Hill project. The very ground these towns are built on is shifting.
It is a cycle of constant high-stakes friction. The climate forces the economy to adapt, the economy shifts the demographics, and the infrastructure has to be continually rebuilt to handle the new reality.
It's a great way to summarize it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because as you read through today's broader sources, you realize this isn't just a Colorado mountain town problem.
Not at all.
This theme of systemic fragility, of obsolete calendars and logistical logjams, it's playing out on a massive scale across the entire country today. The local volatility is a perfect microcosm of the national volatility.
Yeah, the systems are buckling under pressure everywhere you look.
Now, before we dive into these next national and international stories, I do want to set a quick framework for you listening. Our sources today contain some highly politically charged updates. We've got stuff regarding the Department of Homeland Security, immigration enforcement, and the previous presidential administration.
Right.
And our focus here isn't to debate partisan politics, left or right, or to litigate foreign policy. We are strictly looking at the logistics, how these political stalemates act as a wrench in the gears of global travel, infrastructure, and energy markets. We're just reporting what the sources say.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly illustrates how fragile our complex national systems are when the administrative calendar breaks down.
Let's look at the confirmation happening in Washington today. The U.S. Senate just confirmed Markwayne Mullin as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security in a 54-45 vote.
Yeah, he is replacing Kristi Noem.
And he is stepping into this incredibly massive apparatus right in the middle of a department funding shutdown.
And the immediate real-world consequences of that administrative stalemate are playing out at airports across the country right this second.
It's a mess.
Because of severe funding gaps and staffing strains within the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA, we're seeing Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers, ICE agents, being actively deployed to domestic airports to assist with security lines.
Wait, let's explore the mechanics of that. How does an immigration enforcement agency end up scanning boarding passes at a domestic terminal?
It's an emergency reallocation of federal resources. Both TSA and ICE fall under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when Congress fails to pass a standard funding calendar, the DHS secretary has to triage. If TSA doesn't have the funded personnel to process spring break travel volumes safely, the department forcefully shifts personnel from other internal agencies just to keep the physical doors of the airports open.
But doing so compounds the friction significantly. Our sources are showing reports of TSA lines stretching for hours as these temporary operational structures try to handle the load.
It's unsustainable.
And on top of the administrative chaos, the actual physical travel infrastructure is having a brutal day. I mean, there was a collision at LaGuardia Airport in New York between a commercial airplane and a fire truck.
Unbelievable.
And back in Colorado, a parking garage partially collapsed next to a southeast Denver office building, literally crushing two cars.
It feels almost metaphorical, you know, but it's a very physical reality of deferred maintenance and system overload. When the administrative levels are frozen in political standoffs, the funding and attention required to maintain the physical infrastructure lag behind.
And that friction extends all the way to the global energy markets. The international standoffs happening right now are genuinely head-spinning.
Oh, absolutely.
Former President Trump has paused threatened strikes on Iranian power plants for 5 days, claiming that there have been productive talks. But almost immediately, Tehran pushed back, calling claims of any contact fake news.
And while that geopolitical whiplash dominates the news cycle, the ripple effects on energy infrastructure are profound and immediate.
Yeah.
For example, the Trump administration is currently paying $1 billion to a French company, Total Energies, to force them to drop their U.S. offshore wind leases.
I read that in the stack, and I had to stop and reread the paragraph. Under what legal or executive authority does the federal government just wire $1 billion to a foreign energy company to cancel an existing American infrastructure project?
It's an aggressive intervention in the free market using federal lease buyout mechanisms.
How does that work?
Essentially, the government auctions off tracts of the ocean for wind development. If an administration decides they want to halt that development for political or environmental reasons, they can't always just tear up the contract.
Right, there are legal protections.
Yeah. They have to pay a massive cancellation fee, a buyout, to regain control of the leased territory.
So they are spending $1 billion of taxpayer money to actively halt domestic renewable energy development, right as the looming threat of strikes on Middle Eastern power plants threatens to destabilize global oil prices.
That is the ultimate systemic friction. The energy market relies on long-term, predictable calendars. It takes years to build a wind farm or drill a well.
Right.
But the sheer velocity of these administrative pivots, you know, canceling leases overnight, pausing international strikes by the hour, it creates a landscape where energy executives can barely predict what the rules will be from one week to the next.
It's that reverse snow day feeling again, but on a global scale.
Exactly.
The old schedules are useless. Everyone is being forced to instantly change gears, whether you are a local skier in Vail, a frustrated traveler stuck at LaGuardia, or an energy executive sitting in Paris.
When the calendar breaks, reaction is the only strategy left.
But, and this is so vital to highlight as we look at the back half of today's sources, this isn't just a ledger of failing systems.
No, not at all.
Despite the environmental stress, the economic pressures, and the national political volatility, human adaptation really thrives in the friction. These communities are actively finding ways to heal, to bypass broken rules, and to set incredible new milestones.
The resilience of a community under pressure is often the most revealing part of the story. You learn what they truly value.
Let's look at how Vail is adapting its approach to community wellness. With all this anxiety, Vail's profile in the psychedelic therapy space is rapidly rising.
Yeah, this was super interesting.
The sources detail a new facility in the valley called Solutions. It is a completely sterile, state-licensed production facility cultivating psilocybin mushrooms to supply legal healing centers.
It's a fascinating pivot. You have a town globally recognized for adrenaline, for pushing the physical limits on the mountain, transitioning into a hub for alternative, deep-dive mental health therapies.
But how does a facility like that even operate legally in a space that is still federally murky?
By strictly adhering to state-level regulatory frameworks. Colorado voted to decriminalize and regulate certain psychedelics. So Solutions is operating essentially like a highly regulated pharmaceutical laboratory.
Oh.
They track every spore and yield to ensure the product going to state-licensed facilitators is safe, measurable, and consistent. It speaks to a growing, formalized recognition of the need for structural healing.
And that desire for healing ties directly into another deeply poignant story from today's sources. Survivors of the tragic 1976 Vail gondola accident, an event that deeply scarred the town when 2 gondola cars plummeted to the ground, are finally coming forward to share their accounts for the 50th anniversary.
This raises an important question about how societies handle the burden of transition. You cannot successfully navigate the future if you haven't processed the trauma of the past.
Right.
Acknowledging that 50-year-old scar, getting those stories on the record, is a crucial communal step for long-term resilience.
And we are seeing that forward-looking resilience translate into local governance, too. State lawmakers are officially proposing sweeping teacher licensing reforms today. They're actively trying to cut the bureaucratic barriers for out-of-state educators.
The mechanics of that are purely survival-driven. Currently, if an experienced teacher moves to Colorado from another state, the bureaucratic labyrinth to get relicensed can take months and cost thousands of dollars.
Which is an impossible hurdle if you are trying to secure housing in a mountain town experiencing a massive teacher shortage.
Exactly.
The lawmakers recognize that if the community is going to survive the $356 lift ticket economy, they have to abandon the old, slow, bureaucratic calendar. They have to make it immediately feasible for the essential workers who actually run the town to legally work there.
It's pragmatic adaptation. The old rules are actively harming the community, so they are rewriting them in real time.
And finally, we have to talk about the sheer joy of the sports milestones happening today because they act as the ultimate pressure valve for all of this friction.
Oh, I love this story.
Down in Denver, the Summit FC professional women's soccer team just set an absolutely massive attendance record.
Unbelievable number.
63,004 fans packed into Mile High Stadium for their inaugural home opener. 63,000 people showing up for a women's soccer match. That is not just a sporting event. That is a definitive cultural statement about what the public wants to invest its time and energy into.
It's a massive triumph. And back up in the mountains, at Golden Peak in Vail, we saw something you almost never see in alpine racing.
Those are rare.
River Radames and Isaiah Nelson hit a rare dead heat tie for the men's national Super G title. They both crossed the finish line at exactly 1 minute, 8.38 seconds.
A tie down to the 100th of a second.
Exactly that. How vital are moments like that in a world of stage 1 water shortages, billion-dollar geopolitical lease buyouts, and political gridlock at the TSA?
Yeah.
Having 63,000 people screaming for a soccer goal or watching 2 athletes tied to the 100th of a second, it feels like a deeply necessary psychological release.
It is entirely necessary. Think about the psychology of sports. When infrastructure is failing and the climate is shifting unpredictably, human beings crave environments where the rules are perfectly clear, the boundaries are drawn in bright white chalk, and the timing is mathematically precise.
That makes total sense. A dead heat tie in ski racing is a moment of pure, undeniable fairness. It reminds the community of what humans are capable of achieving together, even when the broader systems around them feel incredibly chaotic.
So as we look back at the stack of sources for today, March 30th, 2026, it is undeniably a day defined by the collapse of the expected. We are watching the Rocky Mountains pivot violently from snowplows to wildfire mitigation.
Yeah.
We are watching legacy newspapers abandon the printing press for digital survival. We are seeing national travel infrastructure buckle under administrative standoffs and international energy markets twist under geopolitical threats.
Right.
But through all of that systemic friction, we are also seeing profound real-time adaptation, healing historical wounds, rewriting licensing laws to save local schools, and setting world-class milestones in sports.
It is a massive amount of information to process, and it leaves me with one final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. We've talked constantly today about obsolete timelines. From Beaver Creek closing weeks early to the TSA scrambling to cover holiday travel. Given how unpredictable our physical environment and our logistical systems have become, will our future definition of preparedness require us to abandon the idea of calendars entirely?
Wow.
Are we moving into an era where we can no longer plan our lives by the season or the fiscal quarter, but must instead learn to thrive in a state of permanent, real-time reaction?
That is a fascinating and maybe slightly terrifying question to leave on. The reverse snow day isn't just a weather anomaly. It might be the new blueprint for how we live. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into today's headlines. We appreciate your curiosity, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening. Keep asking the big questions.